The record for the world's longest candy cane ever was set by a chef in Geneva, Illinois called Alan Robbie at a whopping 51 feet, around 15 meters long. But aside from that, where did candy cane come from? When did it start? And what is its history? In this episode of Behind the Shelf, we're going to dive deeper into the fascinating history of candy canes and how it became an integral part of the $1.4 billion Christmas candy market in the US. Welcome to Behind the Shelf, podcast about how everyday products are made. My name is Tarek.
And my name is Amar, and we are your hosts.
It's the holiday seasons, so we thought, what is more relevant and what is more exciting than talking about more holiday stuff? And in this episode, we're going to be covering candy canes. I have to say it up front, I love them. I think their texture and their design looks amazing. I don't love peppermint, so that makes it difficult for me. It's
I
a very
like
difficult.
peppermint. As a kid, man, I loved candy canes. As a kid, candy cane was my jam, and I like peppermint. But now I kind of grew out of it. It's too sweet.
I wonder why did they choose peppermint? And a lot of the candy around the holidays and around Christmas has peppermint in it. Honestly, I don't know why, because it seems like it's not a very wintry flavor. I would think it's something cinnamon, something that has to do with like nutmeg. I would imagine this would be more popular, but peppermint is a very specific flavor. So I'm curious to learn more about that.
So, peppermint back in the day was a very popular flavor in confectionery. And so one thing is the popularity and availability. And the second thing is for flavor and kind of cooling effect. And the third thing, it was supposed to have this medicinal property. We're talking about the 1600s, 1700s. And so that's the mind frame. And they used peppermint, but they also use like cinnamon. They also use like fruit extract and a bunch of other fun stuff.
So there was other flavors that existed outside of peppermint.
Yeah. Well, it all started with just the plain sugar stick. So just the white. And it all started in 1670. So the earliest record of candy cane is in 1670, and it occurred in Germany, in Cologne, Germany. I don't know if you've been. Have you been, Tarek?
No, I know that they're only famous for their cathedral.
Cathedral. Guess what? A choir master in the
Oh, wow.
cathedral in Cologne, Germany. He was like, "Yo, I need something to keep these kids quiet during the service." So he told the candy cane maker, "Hey, can you make me a sugary stick and shape it like a hook and give me that, and I can give it to kids."
Why a hook?
They wanted to look like a shepherd's staff. So you know how the shepherds visited baby Jesus? He
Yeah,
wanted to have
Jesus.
some resemblance of that, story. So the shepherd's staff. And so he made it, and it worked really well. It really caught on. And then as we went into the 1700s, this got very, very popular. So popular, it actually made it across Europe. And it became very tied to Christmas. And it was also part of like Christmas tree decorations. And so that's how it all started.
Okay. And at what point it made its way into the US?
It was not until 1847 it made its way into the US. And it was because of a German-Swedish immigrant. His name was August Imgard. And he introduced it to his friends and family. He used to make it. And guess what? It was in Ohio. So he decorated his Christmas trees with it. He gave it to friends and family. His neighbors were like, "Oh, this is cool." But remember back in, 1847, the neighbors were like part of family. The neighborhoods were like close knit. So if you did something, your neighbor for sure knows about it. And they liked it. Their kids liked it. And then it went from town to town. Essentially, it started blowing up. And that was its first introduction in the United States.
Okay. Did it look exactly like we see it now, or was it just a pure white stick?
Sometime in the early 1900s, that red stripe we're familiar with was introduced. Now, research suggests it was someone named Bob McCormack who kind of introduced it, but it's not definitive proof. Bob McCormack was an American confectioner, and he had a candy company. And in 1957, Bob's Candies became one of the largest companies to mass produce candy canes.
Wow. So they still exist.
Yeah, so Bob's Candies became like a brand. And through acquisitions, I'm not going to go through them. Essentially, it became a legacy brand. And now that legacy brand is now owned by Ferrera Candy Company, which is a really big candy company in the United States.
So it seems like it's an appropriate time to jump into how they are currently made. What are some of the biggest companies in the space today, and how is it currently made?
Like I mentioned, the company name Ferrera Candy Company is really, really big. in candy canes. There are a few other regional players. There's a Logan's Candy, but there are a lot of local regional players, and a lot of people also hand make and kind of sell. So let's talk manufacturing. The first thing they do is mixing and cooking. So simple items: sugar, water, corn syrup. It's all added into a kettle. The kettle is heated to 150 degrees Celsius, 20 to 30 minutes. Now that syrup is ready to be cooled. What they do is they just pour that syrup onto a table. It's called a cooling table because it's cooled to 40 to 60 degrees Celsius. They let it sit there 10 to 15 minutes. And it's still warm, it's pliable, which is what they want, right? Next is flavor addition and color addition. So flavors like peppermint oil are added, and they add it to like starch, and then they mix it and they pour it onto the table. And then they put either knead it by hand or they put it in a kneading machine, which kind of like makes it homogeneous, I guess, so to say.
Okay. What does the kneading do to the candy?
It mixes it. So when you add your syrup, color, whatever, it's hard, it's pliable, but it requires a lot of manual effort if you were to do it. At this point, it's almost like a big blob. Now you got to aerate the base. So the white portion, the reason why it's white is because it is aerated. What happens is they put it into an aerating machine. What the machine does is basically just stretches it until that mixture becomes white. And then they just compact it and make it into a log or something, and then they put it into a table, and it's ready to go into its next stage, which is what we picture as combining, right? That's when everything mixes together. So depending on what the final product is, they layer all those things together, they roll it up, they kind of compact it onto almost like a log, and then it's ready to go into its final stage, which is the thing we're used to, is the rope. What happens is they just take that log, they put it into this machine, which is essentially a bunch of rollers. And what it does is rolls this giant log into a smaller and smaller uniform thin rope. The rope then goes into this last portion, which is almost like a warmer. So I've seen some companies, they have a torch that goes back and forth and makes it warm, just to make it more pliable and more warm for its next two stages, which is the cutting. So a rotary blade goes through and that rope goes in, cuts into uniform pieces. Then it goes into almost like a mold, and a presser just presses it into a hook. It needs to be warm for this so it doesn't break, right? That's why they do that. And then once it comes out, you have your candy cane.
Okay, so we have our candy cane. What happens after that? Is it just now inspection and packing, or do they? I would imagine they need to cool it down now because you said they gotta warm it, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And essentially, it just goes into kind of cooling tunnel, or it goes on to trays to cool. And it's not like cooled in a freezer or cooler or anything. It's just ambient temperature. You just want to bring it down back to room temperature, and that's enough to harden it.
What kind of quality checks go into making of candy canes?
Yeah. So they do a few things, not anything major like we talked about in gasoline or anything. Temperature monitoring. The syrup has to have a spec temperature of 150 to 154 degrees Celsius. Anything above that will trigger crystallization, and it just won't be pliable and it won't taste good. It'll be weird textures. And then next is viscosity, similar relation, right? They want the syrup thick enough, but not too thick or not too thin, because then when you cool it, it's just going to be weird. The next one is pH. The pH of the syrup after it's cooking has to be between 5.5 and 6.5. Also related to kind of taste, texture, and crystallization. You want to avoid crystallization. The next is organoleptic. So basically taste and aroma. Are you getting that peppermint flavor? Does it taste nice? And then a visual test. Is the stripes intact, or is it smudgy? Is it weird? Does it look good? And the next is shape and size, right? These are they a certain size? Is the hook there? Is the hook hard? Because I mean, that's the whole like premise of candy cane. You want that hook, and a hook has to be straight, not like weird, crooked, or anything like that. And then the last is just packaging integrity. Is the seal applied properly? Does it leak? Is there holes? Because these things have really large shelf lives. So that's it. Once you're done that, quality checks are done. That's it.
And we have our candy canes ready for us to crunch on
And
in
we
the
have a
holidays.
candy cane.
Wow, that was very actually interesting and quite fast. It's not that complicated of a process, just a few ingredients. It's essentially sugar, which we knew that. And it's been, I would say, my most interesting piece this episode has been the history. I found it kind of funny that it's to make children quiet in choirs. Sugar always works, it seems like. It distracts them enough until
Yeah.
they start
I had
bouncing
no
around.
idea. Like I had no idea. I had no idea going into this. It was originating out of Germany. Like I would have not thought.
Yeah, that piece of it is also kind of random. I did not expect that because Germany isn't known for that sort of thing, though. But they do love the holidays. They do love Christmas. So I guess
They
that
got
piece of it
festive
kind of makes
spirits.
sense. Exactly. All right, Amar. Well, thank you very much for taking us through this tasty journey of candy canes, and thank you all for listening to Behind the Shelf. We
Yipper.
hope you enjoyed this episode, and with that, hope you have a good holidays. And my name is Tarek.
And my name is Amar. Have a great day.